All right, thanks for joining us, Matt.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, sound loud and clear. So I think we're about 2 minutes past one here, so I think let's go ahead and get started, and then of course, towards the end we'll do some question and answers. So let's just kind of dive in. First, I want to kind of introduce Matt. He's our inkjet lead. I also want to introduce Morgan here today, but I'm going to let Matt kind of take it off, and then he'll pass it back to me, and we'll go over some of the techie stuff. And hopefully, this will be a really our goal here for the end of this is that you're not kind of doing the whole guess and check thing anymore. We want to make sure that you guys are comfortable when you're laying down your pre-treat, and you actually have something that you can kind of reference back to as far as a scientific approach. So, Matt, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Zach. Like Zach said, I'm Matt McCormick. I head up the inkjet team here at the Imaging Spectrum. Some of y'all might know me, and y'all definitely know Zach. And then welcome Morgan Lynn, who is our Epson rep.
Thanks,
here.
Matt.
Hey, Morgan. So basically, he's got a wealth of knowledge as well on around the country dealing with customers who DTG business and has a lot of insight on pre-treat as well. And basically, those of y'all in attendance probably have a DTG printer from us already, or maybe somewhere else. And pre-treat is the key to everything, and that is really the thing that needs to be learned and kind of a science to it to make sure you're not wasting any product, wasting cost, and to make sure your final product is coming out the way it's supposed to. And so it's always kind of a can be a somewhat learning in progress as you start up, and then hopefully it will just be real consistent after that, where you have all dialed in and no problem as you get going. It's always a tricky thing, and we're here to kind of maybe shed some light on some stuff maybe you didn't know, or you can feel free to ask questions at the end of this. We're happy to answer it. So just kind of give a good overview of it, techniques that we find that are very helpful, and and hopefully y'all learn something new and can take it from there and maybe eliminate any frustration maybe you might go through. But is that it in a nutshell, Zach?
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect overview right there. And, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into those topics kind of individually as well. But I do want to kind of throw this up here so you guys kind of know what to expect here. For some of you who are new, we're going to talk about why it's needed, what it really consists of. Of course, probably the most important thing here is achieving those consistent results so we're not kind of playing that guess and check game. Some options for pre-treat. I'm sure, as Matt said, probably a good majority of you guys out there have either got your hands on a DTG or have one currently. So we'll talk about some of the different options from a hand sprayer and roller all the way up to some of the higher end, very reliable pre-treat machines out there as well. And of course, I'll show you some examples of good versus bad stuff that I'm sure you guys might have seen before. And then, like Matt said, at the end, we'll just kind of open it up for you guys. And I call it, let's get creative there too, because there's a few cool things I want to show you when we're talking about mass production and hats and things of that nature as well. So let's jump into this. I know you guys are probably nothing new to you, but I do want to kind of tell you guys here that pre-treat, heat, and print, right? Those are our three factors here. Pre-treat, as Matt said, absolutely the most important. Heat press, a very close second. And of course, we already have a great printer here, so we know we can achieve that quality. It's just going to be getting the proper base laid down to hit those results every time. So I know we're talking about pre-treat, but I always like to talk about a little bit of the fibers just because of how significant of a factor that this is as well for direct-to-garment printing. As you can see here, kind of the cheaper, the carded, the open-end cotton as they call it, you can see it kind of frays. It's not very tight-knit. So you can see your final print, even with proper pre-treat, even with proper results laid down, you're not going to get those high-end results as you would with a ring-spun cotton. This particular one is both combed and ring-spun, so you can see very tight. You can see the final print there too just comes in that more crisp. Now, where the screen printers didn't really have to be so concerned with this, this is a factor where, the higher quality shirts makes a very significant difference for us as well. Some of the Bellas, the next levels, but if you have questions on that, we're more than happy to talk about some of the fabrics and some of the blends that we've tried, things we're happy with, things we're maybe not as happy with as well. So did want to preface it with that. Now let's jump into what we're talking about today. So Pretreat, obviously. So what it really does, the best way I can describe it is a water-based glue that really binds that white ink to the fibers. Really, it's mostly essential for that white ink in particular. Now, as you guys know out there, the number one reason I should say that people get the DTG is so that they can do prints onto dark cotton shirts, especially. So what we need to lay down, obviously, is a base coat that gives us a strong white point to work off of. And from that white point, we can hit those colors more accurately is the best way I can describe that. So, you know, sometimes if you're seeing maybe your reds aren't coming out as vivid or something like that, maybe some color shift, sometimes just increasing that white density can give us a better result right off the bat as well. But what I want to tell you about the Epson Pretreat here, it is both for cotton and polycotton blend. So it doesn't matter if it's a light shirt or if it's a dark shirt, 50-50, 60-40, 80-20, I don't care. We're going to use that cotton Pretreat every time. Now, Epson sells theirs in 20 liters. So, you know, for large productions, this is by far the most cost-effective way to go. It'll come in a concentrated form. So my personal dilution is a 2-to-1. So I do 2 parts of distilled water to 1 part of pretreatment liquid. Now, I'll say this, we put a range of 1-to-1 to 3-to-1. A lot of it's going to depend on you and your customers. 1-to-1, it'll give the shirt a little more of a starchy feel, but it will give it more of that glue to lay down. 3-to-1 will give it less of the kind of the starch feel, the tacky feel to it, but it might not come through as vibrant when you start laying down those white inks. So my personal preference is a 2-to-1. I think that's a really good starting point. And from there, we can either add distilled or we can add more Pretreat as needed. Of course, we have to mention, because of this Okotex certification, this really is kind of a one-of-a-kind. So this has been certified. If you're ever in a competitive bid situation, I do like to say with the Epson, you can say we're Okotex certified, safe for babies, safe for pets, the works there. So it kind of gives you a leg up on some of the others that are out there, some of the competition you might run into. Last but not least, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there. There is a polyester Pretreat that's available. It's really specifically for the 100% polyesters. Now, I'll tell you with that one, there's definitely some more trial and error involved. A lot of it comes down to finding that sweet spot with your white density, just because since this polyester is so porous, you'll see a lot of the ink will seep through it. So what we do is we put that seal down, that polyester Pretreat, and what I end up doing is usually bumping up that white density so it kind of clumps together more and I get a final, more defined and vibrant print as well. So that's kind of the overview on that. I do want to mention this for folks out there as well, that we do also sell the gallons. So we will put those in concentrate form. So again, really 1 gallon, you're probably extending closer to about 3 gallons there. So if you need something for the smaller jobs, both cotton or polyester, we can absolutely cater to that for you as well. One thing, kind of the most important thing that we're all here to talk about today is consistency. So what I personally do, and this is a strong suggestion for you guys out there, especially if it's a time you're getting maybe a brand new shirt for the first time or a new blend, a new thickness, anything of that nature. What I like to do, I have a gram scale here that I just got from Walgreens, Walmart, one of those. And what I do is I place my dry shirt on there and I zero it out. From there, I'll put it into my Pretreat machine. There's 2 schools of thought here. Technically, I can use the distilled water. That way, I'm not saturating, you know, for my first print, I'm not ruining that shirt. I can saturate it with the distilled water, find that sweet spot of 30 grams. So after I put that shirt on the Pretreat and pull it back off, I'll weigh it one more time. And then what we're looking for is about that 30, maybe 32 grams of Pretreat. Now, and this I should preface is also for a 14:16 print. So my personal thought, you know, for the price of Pretreat and what we're using, I do often coat mine with a 14:16 just because I want that extra coverage. Even if I'm not going to be doing a full print, I just know that I have that area to, that moment of error, if you will. So is there too much Pretreat? Yes, definitely. I know a lot of people think, well, I don't like the way my whites are coming out. Let me just coat this thing and soak it. What can happen though, 2 factors here. One, you start to see some crystallization. So if you press it and you start to see some kind of shiny, some crystally spots that are kind of hardened, that's usually a telltale sign right there that a little bit of too much of the pre-treatment has been laid down. Now, the thing about it, if too much has been laid down, you know, you can put that shirt to the side, wash it, and as soon as that first wash is done, it'll actually remove the entire pre-treat from your shirt there. So that way we can put it back into our pre-treat machine, use the right amount of pre-treat consistency there, and then we'll be good to go. So always good to have a scale, probably just right next to your DTG machine or your pre-treat machine, so you can do that. Now, what I will say is I don't want you to think that every time you have a shirt, you're going to have to weigh it out. What I would probably say is, for your Bella 3001s, maybe for your certain Gildans, maybe your PT 450s, whatever you might be working with, kind of have a working chart. That way, depending on the machine you're using, you can either dial it in. You can say, maybe I want 51 density, or maybe I want to dial it in a 0 to 10 speed mode. So a lot of it comes down to that initial prep, and once that's taken care of, we'll really be off to the races from there.
And Morgan, I don't know if you want to chime in with anything on your side, experience-wise, as far as getting the right amount of pre-treat or what you see out there. Is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that as far as consistent pre-treat, that probably over 80% of all the troubles that we see as far as help desk tickets of, hey, this isn't the quality that I seen at the trade show or at the demo that I saw in your showroom, or this didn't look like the demo sample that you sent. It all comes back to pre-treat. And there not being enough pre-treat. I would say most of the time there isn't. And an example was I went to a university and they had some kid that was just pre-treating, and at the time they were pre-treating with a roller. And when the prints just didn't look great.
Yeah, that's like, good luck with that.
Yeah. And luckily, I traveled with a few shirts that from some of the shows that I knew were pre-treated well that we used at the shows. And I said, hey, try to print on this just to make sure that your printer's working correctly. We made sure that, the nozzles are working good. We printed on the shirts. They looked great. And so we immediately identified that, we brought everything back to the pre-treatment process. And I'm sure we're going to go back into, the pre-treater and how definitely important a pre-treater was to get the consistent results. But having that 30 grams and that pre-treater, how it helps you get that consistent results. I can't tell you how many times we get help desk calls that the prints don't look like it did at the trade show. It all goes back to the pre-treatment process. And it's one of the most important things of this whole thing.
Thanks for that, Morgan. And, I want to piggyback off something Morgan said there, which is fantastic. And I do the same thing. I always have some pre-treated shirts that I leave in the back of my vehicle. So, and you're absolutely right. I mean, 9 times out of 10, if it's not, if the artwork is fairly well optimized, that's really what it comes down to. And I'd say we're probably in the same boat as you here, Morgan. Probably about, 80 to 90% of problems come from the pre-treat side of things. So, like Morgan said, I do want to jump into kind of the options that are out there. I'm going to start with the less recommended one, but it is, we definitely have people doing it. And just like Morgan was saying, the kid might grab a spray gun and just kind of coat it to the best of his eye. But what I'll really will strongly encourage you, don't get me wrong, you can get great results with this, but what happens is, if you start kind of, once you get to that shirt number 45, did I spray that right, or did I miss a spot? Is there a line in there? So really, we're kind of overworking ourselves, is the way I would explain it. So yes, a little bit of a cheaper method. Sometimes it's a great way to start out, maybe get some traction, and then from there you can make that investment for a proper pre-treat machine. But I do want to show you guys right here one of our recommended ones. Now, this is definitely a top-of-the-line model here, but the reason we like it so much, very strong motors. I can have two. I can either have my distilled and my polyester connected, or I can have a cotton and polyester in there as well. A lot faster. I can dial in my results each time. So this particular one is on a speed scale. So the way that that'll work is the more saturated I want the shirt to be, the slower I'll make it. So it will actually run down that track a little less, or if I'm maybe doing like a white shirt and I just want a little bit of pre-treat laid down, I can increase that speed, just lay down as little as needed, and then kind of be good to go from there. So the reason I bring up this open and closed towards the bottom, now this is an enclosed model that we're looking at right here. So the nice thing about that is if you're in a smaller confined space, maybe it's close to your printer, maybe there's some sensitive materials in there, that you don't want to get sticky. This is a great option. Now, the reason I bring up something like an open air is you actually will be able to have a faster production run with something like this. So technically we could stack, let's say maybe 15 or 20 shirts. From there, I can hit the start button, spray it. I can either put it right onto my heat press, or if I'm in a more industrial kind of productive environment, I might put it onto a tunnel dryer. That way I can really keep my production flowing. And this particular one they rated about 300 shirts an hour, if you're really cranking it. So just a few options that are out there. Now, this particular one is motorized, and it's got a touch screen as well. So if you're looking for settings that maybe you can save and with the digital age, that's definitely an option out there also. Now, let's get into the examples. And so I'm hoping that this is something that maybe you guys have run across before, but I want to show you kind of what it looks like and how we can avoid these issues in the future. So you can see here proper pre-treat versus the improper pre-treat on a shirt like this. So I'm sure it's not too difficult to see really what that proper pre-treat does. And again, it's going to let that white base adhere properly rather than seeping into the shirt. So you can see immediately off the bat, if we were doing anything, let's just say it was, for a school or something with a Pantone or particular color, you can see that there's no way that we'll be able to hit that without adding that proper pre-treat down. So, if you start to see your prints are maybe a little blurry, maybe they're not quite as vibrant as you might like, very good indicator that we probably don't have enough pre-treat laid down there. Now, this is a common question that we get as well. And they ask, well, if it's for the white inks, do I always need to put a pre-treat down on a white t-shirt? And absolutely not. Now, here's what I will say on that regard, though. The pre-treated shirt, as you can see here, is always going to be more vibrant. More crisp is the way I would describe it as well. Now, that being said, we do have quite a few customers who are getting into the vintage look. And there's two ways we can dial that in. Here's a non-pre-treated white shirt without a white underbase. You can see it already has that kind of, multiple wash look to it. We can also adjust some of our settings in Garment Creator, maybe lower the quality, reduce anything like that. But I do want to say that if you're just churning out maybe a cheaper shirt and you just need something quick and they're not going for the utmost quality, technically you can run a white shirt through there without any pre-treat. But I will tell you my personal experience, I always lay a little bit of pre-treat down, even on my whites. And that's just because I feel I get a much more crisp final print there as well. I know pre-treat is its own beast, of course, but, really it is a piece of the puzzle. So the reason I want to bring up the heat press side of things is maybe a few issues you guys might have come across out there. Probably the most common thing, I hear, one, my shirt feels too starchy or it feels kind of stiff. And two, I have a bounding box. I have like a pre-treat box, essentially, that's around my garment there. And there's two factors to that as well. One, it could be a little bit too much pre-treat laid down. Again, if you start to see that crystallization, or if you're starting to see like an actual hard line around those edges, that might be a sign that we've either laid too much down. Also, I will say on these particular heat presses, they do have a hover mode as well. So sometimes for maybe some certain brands of shirts, I might hover it there before I actually give it a full press, just kind of pre-cured, if you will. Now, one thing I will say about the Geonites that I am personally very happy with, of course, made in the USA, but their support has been fantastic. Great heating elements and something that we can get our hands on fairly quickly if something goes down. So, for most people, I think the heat press seems to be the most common there. But I do want to mention as well that there is kind of a step up, if you will. And so something like this is a blazer. This is an IR, and it has a forced air in it as well. So something that is required for tunnel dryers for direct-to-garment printing. Now, this is a really cool one because it's actually modular. So what we can do is we can start with, I believe it's an 8-foot belt there, and then we can always add on, as our production increases. It's a very scalable option, which I think, in my personal experience, it's always something that, 1 DTG is where we start, but, by the end of it, we might get a fleet, and then we might be jumping into something just like this, where we're doing maybe a couple hundred shirts a day or something of that nature. Now, one thing I will caution on these, as you might have assumed, you will probably need to have an electrician come in there and make sure you have the proper power, 220 there, for these particular units, but we can help you guys out with all that as well. One thing I do want to say that I like about the tunnel dryer is I feel like it does alleviate a little bit of that box, and in my opinion, it does give us a little bit more of a more screen printed, I guess, a more retail final feel to it. Sometimes I've seen people where they don't like the final print because after they press it, maybe with the Teflon sheet in particular, it kind of has like a sheen and almost has kind of a vinyl-esque feel, which obviously is what we're really trying to avoid here for the most part. So two things on that. I personally don't recommend using the Teflon unless you really do want that kind of shine at the end of it. To me, the parchment paper gives it much more of a retail matte finish, which I think majority of people out there prefer. So just a few options, and honestly, you know, there's quite a few. We can even start talking about. Lawson makes a Digi-Dry box. It's kind of like a standalone for one shirt at a time. But you know, if you have more questions on that, we definitely want to. We'll definitely talk one-on-one about some of the options out there. Is there anything you guys want to add on the heat press side of things?
No, I mean, of course, you can use it for this particular model that you saw up there. The belt will go one way and then you can make it go the other. So a lot of people will pre-treat on one end, send it down one way, and then print and then send it back the other. So
Perfect. So I think what we're going to do from here, guys, probably enough of the talking. I do want to go into a basic demonstration. Now, I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I just want to kind of show you guys some of the pre-treat options that we have out there as well.
All right, guys, now what I really want to show you is how easy it is to start with a non-pre-treated shirt and finish with a fully cured print ready for wash and wear. So here we go. I'm going to start with my non-treated shirt. I'm going to put it into our silver jet here today. All I want to do is make sure any major wrinkles are out of it. And then we'll go ahead and close it here. And you can see why we like the Pretreat machine so much. Really, one click, I already have my settings dialed in. You can hear it laying down the Pretreat right now. So simple as that, we're done there. Now what we're going to do is take our pre-treated shirt over to the heat press here. We're actually going to cure it. So what we're doing is we're removing any moisture that might remain in the t-shirt. Now what this is going to do is give us a nice dry area to work off of. So when we finally lay that print down, we're going to get an unbelievably crisp, high quality image here. So what I personally like to do is I'll kind of increase my pressure to about medium here, just so I can kind of push all of that moisture out of the t-shirt. Now again, this is the Geonite DK20A. A signifies the auto pop-up, so I do strongly recommend having a hover and auto pop-up system, especially if you're a one-man band operating this unit here. So I usually cure for about 335 degrees for about 60 seconds there. You might notice that some of the steam is kind of coming off it. When we kind of see that dissipate, that's usually a good sign for us to go ahead and lay it on the printer there. So. Now, one thing I will say, as your production kind of increases, one thing that we've seen folks do is they can increase the amount of machines they're using, and then they might go from something like a heat press into something more industrial like a tunnel dryer. This way what I can do is as soon as I finish a shirt, I'm putting it on that conveyor and I'm jumping into my next one. So always a scalable option for anyone out there who kind of wants to jump up into that next tier. So you can hear our shirt's finished there. So all I'm going to double check so that paper comes off super even. Just going to feel it, make sure there's no moisture. I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead. We'll remove this and we'll get it prepped on to our platen here.
All right, guys. I just wanted to kind of show you the process for those of you who may not have seen or wanted to kind of see the machines in action. Like I said, I know it's not the most exciting thing, but I really want to show you guys something right here, especially how even that final coat is. So hopefully you can see, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, that's right there the reason that we love the Pretreat machine so much. But anyway, you know, one last thing I do want to kind of throw at you guys. If you're doing something, let's just say masks are a big thing right now. So I do want to kind of just show this quick video. And masks there's definitely different types, as you guys are seeing. There's a lot of types out there. Flat masks, a little bit easier, I would say, and you can honestly even throw those into your Pretreat machine as well. Now, these with the seam, what I like to do is I have a bottle that I've already have distilled there with my distilled water in it. And I coat both sides, so I kind of treat it as two separate sides, if you will. So that way I have the most even coat, whether I'm printing on just the cheek or if I'm printing across the whole thing. Now, if I'm looking to basically print to that right away, what I would encourage you guys to have, if you don't have a tunnel dryer, maybe just a heat gun on hand. And with the heat gun, you can carry that right there. What I personally do, if I have a little bit of time though, I'll put a couple of masks on my cart. I'll pre-treat them all, and then I'll let them sit out in the sun and just kind of let them kind of air dry. I'll let the sun kind of cure those for a little bit, and then we can start going to town on that as well. And then last but not least, something like hats, very similar. A lot of it does become a visual at that point. You want to make sure that everything's coated. You don't want any spots that are oversaturated, but you also don't want anything where you might have had a small gap or just a small little area that's missed, because you'll definitely notice that in the final print. So I think overall, that's probably a pretty quick kind of overview crash course here. I do want to kind of jump in to any kind of Q&A now. If you guys have some questions, maybe some anything as far as how do you pre-treat this, or what's the best for, these results. So let us know. Let's see what we got here. And I will say too, if you guys are looking into, just because I know right now it's the big thing, but for mass production, we have actually started carrying masks here as well. So if you guys need anything for from polyester to cotton masks, we can absolutely handle that for you. Is there any questions that you guys have? Maybe some troubles you've had with your pre-treat out there, or anything in particular on that? Seeing no questions so far, so hopefully we answered what you needed there.
Also, just kind of throw out there, I mean, if y'all can answer this, or if you want or not. I don't know if everybody's on Epson pre-treat, or are y'all using something else out there? Just kind of curious what.
Oh, great question. Yeah.
What is what you found is good? We recommend Epson pre-treat for sure, because it's eco-tested and just it's we think it's the best results you get, especially if you're working with F2100 printer. But we know there's other options out there, so just kind of curious if people are using something else.
Absolutely. Now, just from in the field, I have heard some good things. From what I've heard, some people who switched over to Epson, I should say, it did alleviate a little bit of that bounding box for a few folks as well. And again, some of that comes down to the proper distillation. Two parts to one part usually can alleviate that. But Stephen, great question. Stephen's asking, what's the price range on a pre-treat machine? Fantastic question, really. And it's a pretty wide range. Matt, you want to kind of maybe take this one?
Yeah, I mean, it can range from about $1,500 up to $5,000, and it really depends on your production level, because there are some open-ended pre-treat machines that are that do the job fine and lay down a good coverage and all that stuff. It just, you're kind of susceptible to overspray. If you're fine with that, without, a cover or something like that, you can get around for that much. But we usually recommend the professional ones from either Lawson or Pearl, and like the Silverjet or the Zoom, which can be about, in the neighborhood of, $2,800 up to $5,000. But they're accurate. The nozzles are state-of-the-art, industrial made, excellent support, just consistency, all the time. And it is, Lawson's a recommended product that Epson recommends on their machines. And there's other options out there too. Like I said, we do sell the Pearl. Pearl is a real nice machine, especially the Pearl Elite. That's about, I think like close to 4,000 or about 3,800. It's got a digital, digital setting that's kind of cool, and makes it a little more unique than the Lawson ones. We primarily sell Silverjets and the Zoom. Those are our main two, but there are some open-ended ones that can do the job too, if maybe, fit your budget. But just give us a call. I mean, we can kind of work around to see what you're working with, and just see what makes sense.
Absolutely. And, one thing I will say that we've noticed, I think we can all agree here, we've noticed on the pre-treat machines is, the more expensive ones, you see why. I mean, something like in the Zoom, you get 2 lines, you have a stronger motor, less chance for having to do any of that manual maintenance as well. But like Matt said, I think the best thing for anyone who's kind of considering that, give us a shout and we can kind of walk you through some of the cost-effective options and kind of find that sweet spot for you guys.
Now, this is Morgan. As far as pre-treaters, do you have pre-treaters in your showroom today?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Morgan. Yeah, so, one thing I do want to encourage anyone, even if they already have a DTG or if they're thinking about getting into it or maybe just want to see something in action, absolutely stop by. We're following all the CDC guidelines, so, masked up, we'll sanitize, we'll make sure it's a safe environment for you. But, I always tell everyone, and this is the same for any of the units we have in here, seeing it through a screen is one thing, really seeing it up in person and actually getting that tactile feel, that's what we all need. And I think for an investment like this, it makes a very sound decision. So let us know on any of that. Absolutely, any of these machines, any of Epson's top tiers, we've got them in place. So fluorescent, DTG, solvent, photo series, whatever you guys need, we've got it covered. Any other questions, guys? I'm hoping that today, you guys, for those of you who didn't have really a scientific approach, I hope this really helps a little bit, kind of alleviate maybe some of the frustration and headache that you might encounter here and there. Now, different blends of shirts, all that, we're going to have to make our tweaks there. But once they're set, like I said before, we'll write those down. We'll have them at our fingertips, and we'll be going to town from there. So, any other questions I can answer for you guys? All right, I think we're looking good here. I'm not seeing any anything coming through.
Definitely, if you have anything that you couldn't think of or we didn't cover, just feel free to call myself or Zach over here, 214-342-9290, and just ask for one of us. And definitely, like I said, if there's something you do, if you don't have and you want to come check out in person, just give us a call. We can schedule that as well. And then just go over all that information.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thanks for hopping in, Morgan. Good to have you as always.
Thank you, guys. I think it's good. I think I can't say how important the pre-treat process is to this whole DTG printing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so
sir.
hopefully you guys realize now, I know we're hopping on it, but you see why. So yeah, give us a shout. Let's talk one-on-one. Let's get you where you guys need to be. We'll get you covered here. All right, everybody.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to close it up here.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.